1, 2, 3.
Not a cop-out, but any one of the 4 candidates outside of myself here would make a better candidate, make a better president than anyone that the Republicans are going to put up, or anyone that the Democrats. I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 29 years.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Austin Peterson. I am from Missouri. I was born in Independence. I was raised on a horse farm in Peculiar, just a short drive from a town called Liberty. I was steeped in libertarianism as a young man. I learned about personal liberty from my parents, who were deeply religious, and they taught me the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I learned about economic liberty when my mother and father sent me out into the fields in the summers to plant chrysanthemums and sell them to the people of my small town. I learned the value of a hard day's work and how to earn a dollar. I was also taught how to ride a horse and how to shoot a gun, and how to respect a gun. My father was in the Special Forces. He was a Green Beret. That Green Beret sits above my fireplace, and I have great respect for our service members because of that. And I think that I would be the best nominee for the Libertarian Party because, while I'm sort of the anti-establishment candidate right now, in this anti-establishment party, I think it's time for us to shake it up and to bring a pure, hardcore libertarian message to the American people in a way that they find palatable. Because I think that we can sell our principles to the American people as long as we're selling it with the veneer of the sort of establishment, in a sense. You know, there was a famous radical who said that real revolutionaries do not flaunt their radicalness, but they cut their hair, they put on suits and ties, and they infiltrate the system from within. Well, let me tell you something. I've been fighting every single day almost for the last 10 years for this cause. I started with Ron Paul in New York City, where I took a 12-man operation, and we raised $1 million, and we got 1,200 volunteers for Ron Paul. But it didn't end there for me, because the Libertarian Party called me up and said, hey, we want some of that fire, we want some of that pizzazz. So I moved to Washington, D.C., and I turned your national office into a powerhouse of activism, and I plan on doing that again. Now, listen, I know that you guys, I'm a little bit fresh to you. I'm the youngest on this stage, but I am not inexperienced. I've also run a business and made payroll. I run one of the most powerful libertarian news magazines in the United States. The LibertarianRepublic.com reaches 1.5 million people a month. That's not all libertarians. I've been converting people to libertarianism for a decade. And I've been doing that I've been doing that for profit. So I think the ideas are marketable. Not only have I worked internationally to spread libertarianism to countries like Russia, Malaysia, Brazil, China, and other hotspots of authoritarianism, but I also produce one of the most libertarian television news shows. Judge Andrew Napolitano's Freedom Watch, he called me the right side of his brain. Now listen, you guys are wonderful, and I think that we have got a chance this year. The thing that makes me different from these candidates are the things that are going to make the general population go, this is the guy that we want. Because while I may be young, I think I can represent a broad swath of the American people, because I'm pro-Constitution, pro-life, and pro-liberty, and that matters. I will get these Cruz supporters when he takes a knee, and I will get the Bernie Sanders supporters who don't want corporatism or crony capitalism. I'll fight for you, and I'll make you proud to be a libertarian, I guarantee you.
Yeah!
I first read Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience when I was in college. Not because I wanted to, but because I was forced to. Now, there's a contradiction my brain has never reconciled. My first arrest for marijuana was in 1971 in the town of Bristol, Virginia. I was walking down the street, smoking a joint, and got arrested. When I got out of jail, I went straight home, rolled another one, went to the same location, and then I got arrested again. When I got out of jail the third time, facing 25 years if I got caught in that town again. So I went to Mexico, where I was immediately arrested for marijuana. The take-home went something like this. I was stopped at a federal checkpoint. I've been smoking. Of course, you can smell it. And the federal says, "¿Tienes marijuana?" I said, "Sí." "¿Cuántos?" "Creo que es demasiado." In other words, I think it's way too much, and I was arrested. So after that, I decided that marijuana I should stay away from for a while. And so I started selling in Mexico jewelry without a license. I watched I get a free license, and in Puerto Vallarta, I got arrested for selling jewelry without a license. This has been sort of a habit of mine. Most recently, I think many of you have heard about my police situation. I was approached by a government agent who asked for a $2 million donation. I said no. A week later, my property was stormed by soldiers. My dog was shot. I was tortured. He came back the next day and said, "Have you reconsidered your donation?" I go, "Get the F off my property." So we all know how that ended badly. When I came back to the States, my first day back, I was penniless. All I had was my jacket and my shoes. And I met this woman who was 30 years old, beaten and battered. She was forced into prostitution at the age of 20, and for 10 years lived as a slave under a pimp. I rescued her personally. I married her, and I hope she's watching the stream tonight. I love you, baby. Most recently, I think I'm due for another arrest soon, and I'll explain why. So 3 weeks ago, I debated the FBI mouthpiece about the Apple FBI problem, and I think I won that hands down. I also dug up, since I am John McAfee, I can find out anything about you guys. So I dug up a contract in 2013 where they had the equipment that would let them do that, and I think I won that. Today, the Justice Department is once again going after Apple for someone else who's a drug dealer in New York City. I wrote an article for Business Insider this morning, and it's going, unfortunately, viral. The headline is, "John McAfee to the FBI. I am the pitbull that will bite your ankles forever." And in there, well, it's not good, so, hopefully they'll let me finish this debate before they cart me out. Thank you very much.
A libertarian position. States across the nation are legalizing medical and adult use of marijuana. Even here in Texas, we're preparing for the upcoming legislative session. In fact, we'll be doing a briefing tomorrow from 1 to 2 in the Elm Room. And on Sunday, delegates will be addressing the drug policy plank of our platform. When elected, how will you utilize your executive powers and the executive branch to end the failed war on drugs? I'll start with Mr. McAfee.
Well, first of all, I think that marijuana is separated out way too much. Drugs are drugs, whether it's coffee or alcohol or heroin. And if we in fact we own our bodies, then there can be no limits to what we may do with them. And a government that tells me I can or cannot put something into my mind or my body is no government whatsoever. So my first act is I will pardon not just all the marijuana offenders, but every non-violent drug offender in our prisons. Non-violent citizens. That will be a start. And I know that the executive branch cannot create law, but it can carry out the enforcement. So if you assign the DEA to some other task, well, why don't we just put you all along the border and just try to keep the drugs from coming in and stay the heck out of American citizens' ways? I think we can legally do that. But it's a horrendous, horrifying situation. I've been in prison many times, unfortunately. And I can promise you, it is a horrific. I learned about liberty and freedom from prison, believe it or not, because once that is taken away from you, completely, then you understand its value. And you have to trust me, I understand its value. Thank you.
So I think I've assembled one of the finest teams of economic advisors, military advisors, and lawyer and team of libertarian lawyers that I think would make a fantastic transition in government for you all. And several of those advisors have told me that the president actually does have the authority to end the federal war on drugs on day one, and this is how. All we really need to do is to ask the head of the DEA to set the enforcement schedule of these drugs to 0. So I can end the federal war on drugs on day one, setting all drugs to 0, and kicking the war on drugs back to the states, ending the federal war on drugs on day one, and I would do it. Drugs are dangerous, and there are some inherent problems of federalism because, Texas might execute you for looking at a joint. California might make it mandatory to wake and bake every day. So just realize that there are some problems inherent in that. But the president does have certain constitutional authorities, and he does have the ability to set the drug policy in that way. We can end the DEA by ending their enforcement ability, and that's what we ought to do. Ending the war on drugs is step one to stopping the overflow of criminals in our system. We unfortunately do not have the power to pardon all nonviolent drug offenders because the president can only pardon someone who's convicted of a federal crime, and that's important. But I would absolutely consider all federal prisoners who have committed non-violent drug crimes, and I would do so in accordance with the law, the Constitution, and with libertarian principles in mind, I promise.
Imagine that you're in a television studio in San Francisco, and you're getting ready for their local version of the Today Show. The discussion so far has been focused on the upcoming anniversary of the school shooting at Sandy Hook. Surely you don't agree with that NRA lunatic Wayne LaPierre that all teachers should be armed. What is your solution to the growing violence in this nation? And should we amend or abolish the obsolete Second Amendment?
You make the assumption that I do not want all teachers to be armed. The Second Amendment is a necessary and structurally integral part of our Constitution. People have always gone armed. In the Renaissance, those flowering period of intellectualism and beauty and art. Look at all of the paintings of all these sweet faces. They all had swords and a dagger. And when pistols came along, the pistols stuck in their belt. These were the literati of the time. We're our people too. We don't no longer use swords, or for me to be too heavy to lift, but we have firearms. There is no difference. There is no difference whatsoever. We have a fundamental right to protect ourselves. There is no magic button that you can push when a burglar has broken into your house and is holding a gun to your head. There's no button you can push to make the police magically materialize between you and the police. They are not here to protect. They are here to clean up after you've been shot in the head. I'm sorry. Please, people, we are responsible for our own safety and the safety of those that we love. Our families, our wives, our children. So, if anybody has ever Googled me, if you can find, 3 pictures in a row that do not have me carrying a gun, I will eat my shoe right here. So I don't think there should be any doubt what side of the line I stand on. Not because I'm warlike. I've never gone down on anybody, but I've never been unarmed either. And please, it's the most fundamental right, the right to self-protection. Thank you.
Well, Texas, let me tell you, I think that the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms ought to be a retail shop and not a government agency. I consider myself a constitutionalist, but truly we do not get our rights from the Constitution. We get our rights because we are individuals, and our natural rights are intrinsic to us and to our humanity. And that includes the right to self-defense. The founders didn't write muskets in the Second Amendment for a Constitution. They wrote arms because they had foresight. And the militia clause is oftentimes quoted to us by liberals as a way to say, oh no, only public officials, only organized militias can have guns. Let me tell you why that's not true. Because George Mason, who was George Washington's hunting buddy, was asked the question of what does this militia clause mean? And he said, oh, I asked her, what then is the militia? It is the whole of the people, except for a few public officials. So let me tell you, I do actually believe in a form of gun control. We need to control the government's use of guns. The Second Amendment wasn't written so that we could go hunting. It was meant so we could shoot at tyrants if our government ever became tyrannical. The McDonald versus Chicago gun case codified to the states. It incorporated the Second Amendment. We now have an intrinsic individual right to bear arms because of those Supreme Court decisions. I do applaud them. But if I were President of the United States, I would ask Congress to send me legislation overturning the National Firearms Act immediately. Because there is no point. Thank you. Yes, we need to overturn this law because, listen, fully automatic machine guns aren't any more dangerous than a semi-automatic. And if we can educate liberals about this, then maybe we can make some ground with them because they see a gun that's black and they think it's scary. But if we have more gun education in this country and we can explain to people the relative safety of firearms, then I think we would have a safer country. An armed society is a polite society. I would defend gun rights to the last man, I promise you that.
All right, so now I'm going to ask each one of you a direct question and then move on to the next person. I'm going to start off with Mr. McCaffey. Your arrival at political activism has come, quote unquote, later in life. Could you describe your journey to this activism and how and why you feel that the Libertarian Party was right for you?
Indeed, thank you for pointing out my advanced age.
You're welcome.
I'm the oldest man in the room. By the way, speaking of age, I'm 100 years older than Austin. Yeah. Every time I'm with him, he teaches me something new. That was effing brilliant about his drug schedule to zero. Duh. I mean, I was thinking I was going to have to march myself with my gang of thugs into prisons and break people out. I love it. I did come late to politics, but I didn't come late to libertarianism. I mean, if you listen, if you were not asleep during my opening statement, I think that I have literally lived the libertarian life. And I continue to do so. And here is why. I have lived that life for your children and your grandchildren. I have been to jail so that my daughter and granddaughter and other children will not have to go. There is no other way. You've got to stand up and do the hard thing. You got to face insurmountable odds. You do. Because here's the thing. By acquiescing to a government's demand to invade your mind and body, you are imposing on your children and grandchildren that same acquiescence without that. That's all I have to say.
All right, to you, Austin. You distinguish yourself from the rest of the field with your position on abortion rights, claiming that you are pro-life. The current Libertarian platform states, recognizing that abortion is a sensitive issue and that people can hold good faith views on all sides, we believe that the government should be kept out of this matter, leaving the question to each person for their conscientious consideration. Could you give us a more detailed explanation of your position from a libertarian perspective? When you say pro-life, what exactly do you mean, and what specific proposals are you making in relationship to this position?
Absolutely. I've been convinced by Dr. Ron Paul on this issue. This is not a matter of religion to me. This is a matter of personal ethics. And I believe that libertarians should be pro-life because all humans deserve the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Listen, I'm very much a realist. I understand that the president does not have the authority. Murder is a state issue, and I think that it should be left to the states. But there are some things that the president can do. Ending the war on drugs will allow women to purchase birth control over the counter. This is statistically proven to reduce the number of abortions. This is perfectly in line with the libertarian platform. It's the type of thing that liberals can get on board with because nobody is pro-abortion. Nobody, I mean, unless you're actually a eugenicist, you're not going to say, yes, we should kill the babies. because I believe that it is a human life. And listen, I'm sort of a nerd. I'm kind of a futurist. I like to think about the future of humanity. And this mass culling, I think, must stop. I believe that science one day will solve these problems and that we can have less coercive ways in order for us to solve the problems of abortions. I wouldn't ban, RU486, or I wouldn't take away birth control pills. The reality is, though, is that libertarians must present to the American people a positive life ethic, a consistent pro-life ethic, which means that we must also be against the death penalty. We must lift ourselves up out of the barbarians of ages. We must be better than those enemies that we seek to destroy, the ISIS enemies, those who burn people in cages. We want to protect every life that we can because humanity is the desire to live. And without life, there is no liberty. So I don't believe that I'm in conflict with the libertarian platform. I just love humanity, I love my fellow man, and I love children and babies, and I think that, listen, if we don't have more libertarian babies, then we won't grow. So please protect the children, and believe me and trust me and have faith that I am fighting for the lives and liberty of every single one of us, even the unborn. Actually, I can say a lot of nice things about everybody up on the stage. I've known Governor Johnson for years. I supported him heartily in 2012, and if he wins, I will support him with all of my heart as well again. Mr. McAfee and I have become close friends. I look at him sort of as a father figure. I'm insanely jealous of his life, and who wouldn't want to live that kind of utopian libertarian life in South America? And an international man of mystery and intrigue. Mr. McAfee is an inspiration to me. I think he's got the sex appeal that this ticket needs. And I could say a ton of nice things. Shauna Sterling has the love and the hope for the future. She represents the faith-based libertarians. Dr. Feldman would be a fantastic Surgeon General. I think any of these candidates. I think there are lots of good reasons to support any candidate on the stage. Governor Johnson is a great voice for liberty. He's got the experience and the credentials that we definitely lack with the rest of us. So we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I could make a case for anybody up on the stage, but vote for me anyway.
You did address this on Stossel, but there's a great deal of chatter about your legal status in regards to the troubles in Belize. Could you tell us how you would address this concern to a wider audience?
I will be more than happy when the Japanese create an android that can speak for me, because I get that question more often than I get hello or you're welcome. So, more than happy to answer. I never was charged with anything. I mean, I've been charged with lots of things, but they're all civil libertarian things. With one exception, I was charged with driving under the influence of Xanax. That was stupidity. That was not civil disobedience. Everything else is because I refuse to submit to the injustice of the world. So what happened is, as I said earlier, they tried to extort money from me. I didn't want to pay it. Didn't feel up to it that day. The government believes is the most corrupt in the world, by the way, and the Prime Minister has had all of his business competitors removed. They just disappear. They fall off of a cliff, they drown, the truck drives into the river, they get shot by a burglar. That's simply the way it is. So after that event, when the soldiers stormed my property, destroyed my property, shot my dog, the whole ball actually is no fun, I promise you. My neighbor was murdered 6 months later. And I truly believe to this day that the government, the police, did that murder. Why? So they could then question me. Because ever since they stormed my property, the press had been around me constantly. Because it was a big story, you know. American entrepreneur arrested, roughed up, tortured, and so on and so forth. So they couldn't touch me, but they could question me. And in police, legally, you can question someone for 60 days. If you don't like the answers, you question them for another 60 days. And in many cases, they string you up by your heels, put a football helmet on your head, and beat it with a baseball bat. I was not up to that day. And so I went on the run. For example, I was never charged. I was never even a suspect. I was simply wanted for questioning, like every single one of my neighbors were wanted for questioning, and they chose to be questioned. I chose not to. And it's as simple as that. But again, I had made one legal mistake. driving under the influence, and I regret that. And unfortunately, it came late in life. It was last year. So thank you very much.
But Feldman is man of the field, a farmer. So you throw dirt at me, you throw shit at me, I will grow tomatoes.
We've seen how hard it can be to work with a partisan Congress. While staying true to libertarian philosophy, how do you plan to strategically implement or remove policies so that libertarian principle can be turned into policy? And if you have any specific examples of how you've done this in the past, we would love to hear that. I'd like to start with Pastor Jyomo.
Yeah, there are obviously lots of issues that we can work with Republicans on and Democrats on. There's a little libertarian in everyone, but let's be honest. If a libertarian president wins, that's a mandate to kick some ass. We're talking about cleaning house here. So with a wave of liberty in the United States and a presidential candidate who destroys the three-party systems, we have a mandate. So I will use the power of the veto to ensure that Congress sends me a path to a balanced budget. And that's what I'm pushing for. I will veto every unconstitutional bill that comes along my desk, or one that does not set us on the path to a balanced budget. Now, I have got the plan that I think is the best way for us to address the problems of our debt and our deficit. That is the penny plan. If you haven't heard of it, do me a favor, Google it. This is what we need to push to the American people. 1 penny out of every federal dollar across the board, we cut spending, and we pass a constitutional amendment, a balanced budget. If the American people have to balance their checkbooks, so should Congress. Right now, we're at 105% of spending, ratio of spending to our GDP. We need to get that down. We need to get that down to around 18%. The government needs to live within their means. We can do this if we move towards a balanced budget amendment, and I would sign such a constitutional amendment to make the government live within their means. But truly, and Gary Johnson is correct, there is a little bit of a libertarian in everyone. So whichever Congress, whichever House, party is in control of Congress, you find the issues that you agree with them on and you work with them on that. If the Democrats are in control, we work on civil liberties issues, ending the war on drugs, ending crony capitalism, and bringing in the Democrats that are principal Democrats on those issues. If Republicans are in control, then we work on balancing the budget. So I think there's something for us to get done in Congress, but we're not just they're not getting sent there to make friends. We're getting sent in there to throw a few elbows and clean house. And that's the attitude we might have to take. It's a little bit aggressive, we might say. But that's what I think the American people want. They want a president who can kick some butt when he gets in the White House, and I promise you that's what I'm going to do.
Government is an instrument of force. It's a lethal weapon.
Well, I had an epiphany recently, and I finally understood there is one thing that the president can in fact do. That is instruct the DEA to set the drug schedule to 0. The founding fathers and mothers, yes mothers, all these men were married. And the marriage know exactly what influence a woman has in this world. And do not forget it if you're married. So now, the founding fathers and mothers purposely structured a government which was tripartite. What does that mean? Has anybody ever milked a cow? No, I guess it's Texas. Oh yeah. It's usually a 3-legged stool. Yes. Wonderful. 3-legged stools do not wobble, cannot wobble, and maintain stability, no matter what chaos is going on around it. So, if we truly act on libertarian principles, which are very, very simple, they are the principles within the Constitution, our right to privacy, our right to self, the fundamental concept that we do not harm one another, we don't take each other's property, and we keep our commitments and our agreements, we keep our word. Is there anything else in the Constitution other than that? Everything else is built upon those precepts. A libertarian president has the Constitution on his side or her side, I promise you. And if you go in with a pure heart and you believe in and act on these principles, Congress will get a clue, I promise you. Thank you.
politics before, prior to getting elected governor of New Mexico. So naively, I really thought that Democrats and Republicans would come together when it came to good ideas.
I want to get away from ideology a little bit. Your wake-up call comes at 3 o'clock in the morning. Your plane leaves the ground at 6 a.m. You do 12 to 16 interviews before your 8 p.m. fundraising dinner. You don't get to eat because you're answering questions to your biggest supporters. You finally get to bed around midnight. This is an average day. Some days are worse. You have to repeat that 150 days in a row. Please describe how many hours a day you are willing to dedicate to this campaign and what toll you expect it to have on your physical health and on the relationship with your family. Starting with John.
You just described my work in every business that I started, which has been many. My first company, McAfee Associates, I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I went without eating, I went without sleep sometimes for 3 or 4 days at a time. But all entrepreneurs have to do this. I mean, this is just a necessity of success in business. And I founded 17 businesses in my 70 years. All but 4 of them flourished. McAfee I sold for $7.8 billion, Oregon sold for $7.8 billion. The total of all the companies I've started are valued now at over $20 billion. I wish I had all that money, I do not. So I'm no stranger to hard work, and you cannot succeed in life in doing anything without hard work. You've got to put your nose to the grindstone, your shoulder to the wheel. And if you're seeking the highest office in this country and you're not willing to work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, you will fail. Just like my competitors in business failed when they took on a 40-hour week for themselves. It can't be done. Can't be done. So what tolls am I going to take on? I don't have a clue. I've been doing this my whole life. And I'm still breathing. So I definitely have the commitment, and I certainly have the experience in hard work. Thank you.
So I've had the good fortune of having a tremendous campaign manager come onto my team who is an entrepreneur himself, who has been fighting doggedly every day. I'd love to give some credit to him, Mr. Tony Stiles. Tony, About 4 to 6 weeks ago, we were in Washington, D.C., and it was 3 a.m., and my girlfriend and my staff had all been passed out. There was nowhere for me to sleep except for a dirty pile of laundry against the wall. And I curled up against the cold wall, and I slept with a airline pillow on my back, around my neck, because I didn't want to disturb everyone who had been working so hard to get me here today. And when the state of Colorado decided that they would not invite me to their forum specifically because they were afraid of what I had to say in their forum, we drove 18 hours that night straight to Colorado to tell them, give them a piece of our mind and talk about liberty and free speech and say what that really means. So, if you think that when the presidential debates comes around, that I'm going to slink away even if they don't invite us, even if we don't make the high percentage, the ridiculous percentage, you got another thing coming, I will be there. I will be there. Governor Johnson has stated that there's no way that a libertarian wins the White House unless they get into the base. What kind of attitude is that? We've got to be champions. Listen, then when you drop out, then why not drop out if you don't get into the debate? Because they're not going to let you in, Governor. You need a champion. I am the Freedom Ninja, and I will fight for liberty just like I have.